Yeah, the camera will just catch it. Yeah.
My name is Jack Pinkowski. I direct the public administration program here in the Huizenga School, and it's my pleasure, distinct honor, to introduce our guest this morning. First to the audience, welcome. I'm glad to have you join us. And our moderator will be Dr. Jennifer Flannery Anderson, who has a PhD in public administration and is our vice president for development in the university. And our special speaker and honored guest is Napoleon Brandford III, the founder of Siebert, Brandford and Frank Schenck, one of the most substantial and largest financial firms on Wall Street, minority-owned firms on Wall Street. And my particular interest in his career is the fact that he graduated with a Master of Public Administration from the University of Southern California and started his career in municipal finance with Dade County Finance Office. And from that, he created this quite substantial firm dealing in municipal bonds and municipal finance. So without further introduction, I'll give you to Dr. Anderson.
Good morning. I'm so delighted to be here. It's really a pleasure for me to be part of the Huizenga School of Business and Entrepreneurship and to get to spend a little time with all of you. Just for fun facts, Dr. Pinkowski and I are longtime friends. We were actually classmates, if you can imagine, with book bags, both working on our PhDs a few years ago. Unfortunately, we just remembered how many years ago, and it's not a pretty number. So anyway, it's fun to be here and getting to work with him. And Napoleon, we're so delighted to have you, and I would be remiss if I didn't introduce all of you to Sharon Brandford, who is here as well this morning. We're honored to have you. Sharon is very special as that she's a Miami native and also has dual degrees in public health and law from the University of Southern California and UCLA, right? Public administration and law. So they must have interesting conversations at home for sure. My money's on Sharon, but we're here to talk to Napoleon. So I have lots of questions to ask, and as I've had a little chance to get to know you this morning, I've thought of even more things I wanted to ask you. But I think first, we're all interested to know a little bit about your background, why you chose the degrees you chose, and how you kind of made the leap from working for a municipality in public finance, what you learned there in going into the private sector.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who convened this event for affording me the opportunity to spend time with young people and those who are interested in public administration. And then I must give a shout out to one of my former office mates. I think Mark Salmon. Yeah. He's here. Wow. I haven't seen Mark in 25 years. It's the same.
Has he changed?
Share the same hairline.
Yeah.
Well, that one question could take up the next hour and a half. But I'll start. My interest, I've always had interest in public service. And so I had this desire to be a mayor or a city manager. And so the only ones I knew, and you recognize in the time period, I know 3 mayors. All of them were African American, and they were all lawyers. You had Carl Stokes in Cleveland, Richard Hatcher in Gary, Maynard Jackson in Atlanta. And so I decided to go to law school and get a dual degree, and didn't recognize until I got there, law school taught you absolutely nothing about public administration. And so I decided to give up that portion of educational pursuit and pursue public administration. fell in love with the subject. And like most things, if you have the right professor going in, it really makes all the difference and really piques your interest. And my first professor was William Peacock. And Bill Peacock, Dr. Peacock, gave us gave us 2 books to read. First book was Peter Drucker, Task Management Responsibilities. You all know about that. But the second book was written by John Gardner, who was the first head of HUD under John Kennedy. And he started Common Cause. It was called Self-Renewal. And it was about organizations doing self-renewal every 3 to 5 years, but also personal self-renewal. And then in that subject, living in Los Angeles at the time, everybody was like hating their jobs and running to the mountains. And his whole view of the world was, if you can enjoy your work, just think how much more you can enjoy your free time. That sounds like a really interesting concept. Mm-hmm. And so I began to pursue this degree in public administration. And they had a unique program. They had the ability to specialize in the administration of local government. And in that, you had to take 3 courses from acting mayors or city managers who are currently in their profession. And my first one I took from Mayor Wes Ullman. He was the youngest mayor in the history of Seattle. He virtually saved the city of Seattle and turned it around. And he taught this intensive course, which was 8 8-hour classes. And then Doug Ayers, and who was from city manager of Inglewood, and then Richard Malcolm, who started the city of Simi Valley. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting with different personalities, and so I got really, really interested. And then I had one course in which I had to pick a particular government to study. And I studied metropolitan Dade County. And I spent a whole semester studying Dade County, and Dade County, back in those days, and we're talking like between 75 and 78, was the most unique county government, the most unique local government in the country. It's different than Broward County or any other county in Florida, including Jacksonville, Duval, because it's a city and a county. It's a county to 29 cities, probably more cities now, and then to as a city services to unincorporated area, which made it very, very unique. And it was the second largest at the time county manager form of government. And so I got hired in an intern program. And I was on a fast track to be in management at Pacific Telephone. But I had advice growing up that if you want to be successful, you need to work in the public sector, because you need to understand how government operates if you're going to be successful in it. And so I took a job. I was making $18,000 at that time. I took a job for $12,000, and no guarantee, but the opportunity to be, in theory, the county manager. And unfortunately, when I graduated January 78. Well, June 6, 78, one of the most significant events happened in local government history. The passage of Proposition 13, which was a tax rollback in California, which started a trend of reducing revenue to local government. And I thought I escaped it, because in July of that year, I moved to Dade County. Well, at the end of that 1 year, Harry Wilson, the local tax guy down in Dade County, put a ballot measure in Dade County to cut taxes by 50%. But he made a mistake in the decimal point in the millage rate, is to cut taxes by 99.5%. He goes to the Florida Supreme Court to try to get them to put it on the ballot as he intended, rather than the way it was worded. The Florida Supreme Court said, no, we must vote on it as worded. And so 43% of the people voted to get rid of government. You can imagine that. No government at all. And so I was saying, this is the wrong profession. But I was blessed, because the guy that was doing the bond work in Dade County, Mike, I can't remember Mike's last name, but anyway, Mike went to work for the Auditor General's office. And the finance director said, you've been through the intern program, and you could step in this position. And the county hadn't done much capital expansion at that time, maybe $100, $200 million, with 4 or 5 year period. The county exploded. We did like 37 bond issues in 48 months. And so I became like an expert in the municipal bond world. And I decided I wanted to be an investment banker. And I can go into that a bit more if you want me to, or is it up to you?
We'll come back to that. I think that's a good
Second.
segue. So what were some of the lessons that you learned about the bond market while you were finance director that you're still using today?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I'm being an administrator. I had a very unique boss that hired me at the time. He gave me some good advice about working in the public sector. First thing he said was, there's a difference between the real world and government.
I agree.
2, don't expect anybody to pat you on the back and tell you you've done a good job. 3, don't sign your name to anything other than your paycheck. And 4, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. First day on the job, first 5 minutes. So that sort of set a tone on how you approach working in government. And what was it?
Well, some of the lessons that you about bond finance or being the finance director that you use today.
Yeah, and in the world of bond finance, it was very interesting because you had to deal, and it's one of the questions going to come up, is how do you maintain your financial stability, and how is that related to the rating agencies, and so on and so forth. And so, when I was in Dade County, we were under siege because we had the outbreak of the cocaine cowboys.
You were right in the middle of it.
Then we had the flotilla from Cuba, and then we had the McDuffie riots. All of that happened like within a 4 or 5 year period. So how do you put together a strategy to convince people that this is a good community? And so we worked with the private sector. We worked with, I think his name was Jan Lightis at Florida National Bank. He was an economist. And so he would talk about the economy of Miami and or metropolitan Dade County. And we took some of the negatives, which was all the drug money that was involved in coming to Miami. And we said, well, the bad part of it is the crime, but the good part is that we have a big cash economy. And one of the statistics that we used was that there was more money on Federal Reserve in the Miami Federal Reserve Bank than all the other Federal Reserve banks in the country, including New York. And so that showed that there was a great economic base here in South Florida. And so we turned that into our advantage. And so we were always able to maintain at least the A1, A+ rating, which was viewed by the investment community as very positive. And so I would always take that approach, working with other governments around the country. Whatever your worst problems are, get that out first before you get into the financial ratios, because these rating analysts, they want to hear your problems first. And if you tell them all the good stuff, they're not really listening. So, okay, when are you going to tell me about your unemployment? When are you going to tell me about your inability to meet those social service needs? See, you addressed that up front. It really helped. And one of my greatest examples was when Harold Washington became mayor of Chicago. We took the approach that we used in Dade County, and we were able to get the city of Chicago A rating for the first time in almost 20 years. After following Jane Byrne and the deficit budget and all that, but I took that Miami experience and used it in Chicago, and then I used it everywhere actually.
Interesting.
So that was very interesting.
Talk a little bit about today, I think, with the bond rating agencies and the influence that they're having on the public sector projects, and what are some shifts or changes you've seen since you first started?
Well, one of the things that has happened is that the rating agencies are always late to the party. And so we as investment bankers and then the people who buy the bonds, we actually do not rely on rating agencies at all. Each one of these big institutions, like it's the Franklin Fund or Lowe's or CNA or Travelers, they all have their own research departments. And it really started with, they missed New York City, when we went into bankruptcy in the early 70s. The big one they missed was Washington Public Power, called Wolves, the big default in the 80s. And so we do not rely on the agencies now. Unfortunately, you have to pay them, and you have to use them. They charge an arm and a leg, but what we do is we make particular presentations to all of these people. We hold what you call seminars, not seminars, they're investor relation meetings. We get the clients come and sit down, either on one-on-one sessions or with a group of investors like in New York or Boston or Hartford or San Francisco, so that they can really understand the creditworthiness of each one of these entities. And the rating agencies, like I said, they're usually slow to the party.
So, you know, it's funny because we've been talking about the economic upturn in our economy. I was listening to the radio this morning. Home sales are up, but not for low-priced homes, more expensive homes. But we had a dip in the stock market yesterday, a big one. So, what do you think we might see going forward? What are some of the good things that might be coming, and what are some of the things we really need to be watching?
Well, from my perspective, and I was looking at this the other day, again, I think we get over-infatuated with the Dow. Yeah. And I have a little sheet here. The Dow since 1970 is not the Dow of today. The Dow in 1970, we had probably 27 of the 30 companies were industrial companies. Big on manufacturing. General Motors, Goodyear, John Manville, Owens, Standard Oil, people like that. Well, today all that's changed. I mean, you got people like Goldman Sachs, Disney, the Disney Company, American Express, got financial services, you got drug companies, you got Walmart, you got Home Depot. So the comparison, I don't think is really that good of a comparison. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have as an economy. All our manufacturing virtually has left the country. Whether it's drug manufacturing or Walmart or all of this, I mean, all of our, that's the problem we have, I think, with the divide now between the 99%ers and the 1%ers. Middle class that I grew up, my family, my parents grew up in, our parents grew up in, the ability to work and move up in a big corporation, you know, those days are gone. And so now you got to really be in the tech world, the financial services, or the legal profession, or something like that to really, really, I think, be successful.
So, when we look at the next few years, the growth will be in businesses that are financial sector, not manufacturing. So what are the things we need to watch for? Are we going to see some rapid growth in things that might not be actually accurate? What will the bond companies be looking at, the bond finance companies be looking at with regard to municipalities?
Well, first thing the bond companies are looking at is, in 2008, there was a major shift in our economy. All the power left New York and went to Washington, D.C. And so now, if you're going to be successful in business, you have to be able to interact with the federal government and local government. And that's why I think the master's degree in public administration is way more valuable than a master's in business administration, because you have to deal with government now. Dodd-Frank and the Volcker Rule has put a real stranglehold on Wall Street's ability to do anything other than traditional financing. And so, to maneuver through that process, you've got to understand how government operates. And that's why I think that master's in public administration is absolutely critical for our society. society. And then I think it's also critical for the technology companies.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real battle brewing, and it's in San Francisco right now, but like most things, it starts in the West and moves east. But these technology companies are pretty much immune from dealing with people and dealing with the real world. They only deal with this thing right here.
Right.
And most of them work in Silicon Valley, but they moved to the city of San Francisco. And now they move to people's neighborhoods, they change the neighborhoods, and they use these big, gigantic buses that are luxury buses. They use the same stops as, say, that, you know, in Dade County is the Metro bus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if it's in Broward or the same thing. And so people are now cutting tires, they're breaking them, and it's really creating a real friction in the country. And it's because they have no connection with government, and they have to have that connection. So they're going to start to focus in on how to give back, and not just take and not be immune from dealing with people.
I think that's really insightful. You're exactly right. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. I noticed from your resume that you're involved in several boards and nonprofits, and talk a little bit about your community service throughout the years, how you've coupled that with your work in the private sector, and how you found it to be a benefit.
Well, two things. One, because I was a student at the USC School of Public Administration, which when I was there, it was the #1 in the country. The other one was Maxwell at Syracuse.
Right.
And then John Kennedy came later.
Right.
Kennedy School came later. And at the time, my dean was also one of my professors. Well, when I graduated, moved to Florida, moved back, went to work for Shearson American Express, he found me. And he put me on the board. So I've been on the board of counselors for the last 20-something years. And so it's one of the boards I'm really involved in. And then I was very involved in the California Healthcare Foundation. And what that was, when Blue Cross decided to go public, we decided to go private, they had to give back to the residents of California. And they gave us $2 billion in well-point stock and a building. And so we had to monetize that, which means we had to take the stock and sell it and use the capital to fund 2 foundations. One is the endowment that's ongoing funding operations, and the California Healthcare Foundation, which I was on, to fund research on how to make things better in the field of healthcare. And so those are 2 of the boards I was intimately involved in. I still am.
Oh, those are really, really interesting. We have a similar situation. Well, we have big public healthcare systems in South Florida, 2 in Broward and 1 in Miami-Dade. There was another one in Miami-Dade. They sold that and again used the proceeds to set up a foundation. That foundation funds a lot of different healthcare programs. Talk a little bit about what it was like to establish your own firm. First you were in the public sector, then you went to work for a private company, and then you embarked on establishing your own firm. So talk about how you came to that decision, a little bit about the process, and what were some of the pitfalls and some of the things you're most proud of.
Well, in Dade County, I went to work for Shearson American Express. 3 famous people worked there. Jim Robinson, who started American Express. Ken Chenault, who's currently chairman of American Express. He's a friend of mine. We served on the NCA board together. What's my favorite board?
Which one?
NCA Corporate Advisory Board. It's the advisory board that we provide leadership for the NCAA basketball tournament.
Oh, that's of course.
And so you get a room and 4 tickets to the Final Four. But anyway, and then Sandy Wild. And Sandy Wild eventually bought Travelers and then made City recently passed. And so I got a chance to work with those guys. And I decided that after being encouraged by the first African American I had met on Wall Street, T.M. Alexander Jr., to start your own firm. And then I thought about risk. And my view of risk is the more I'm dependent on somebody else for my well-being, the greater risk I am of being in jeopardy of having a financial future. And so when I started the firm, I had a vision that, I don't know much about being business, but I'm a measured risk taker. And so what I said was, if we're going to start a firm, it needs to be nationwide. It can't just be in California or Florida or Texas. It needs to be nationwide because the economy of the country is different. You know, like California is booming right now. Florida's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Texas has been very strong.
Very strong.
Illinois has been suffering.
Mm-hmm.
New York has come back on the Bloomberg. And so if you're in these different places, there'll be places where it'll be hot and places that'll be cold, but you'll never be in a position where you can't be successful. And so, and I further expanded out to outlying areas like Anchorage, Alaska, Honolulu, and places like that. So try to cover all the bases. So I thought that would be a way of making something happen. And then also I knew how hard I was willing to work. Peyton Manning and I on the board together. One thing I like about Peyton is every autograph he signs, work hard. Well, I got a chance to meet a famous investment banker back in the late 80s who was very good. And he had this philosophy of he could do 10% more than anyone else. Well, I developed my own philosophy. I call myself 125% man, which is regardless of what anybody can do in this room, I can do 25% more. I don't care what you think you can do, I can do 25% more. And so if you look at, this is my birthday is coming up. I will have been working 46 years, 60 to 100 hours a week minimum, for 46 straight years. And I've traveled almost 7.5 million miles.
Oh my gosh.
On business. So when I say I can outwork you, I can outwork you. And so that's old school, but there's no substitute for hard work. And then also it's a commitment, if you believe in something. And so I believed in the public finance arena because I wanted to leave a legacy. I wanted to be able to point to a hospital or a school or a road or a toll road or an airport that say, I gave back to my community and still got paid also.
And you figured out how to finance that and make it a reality for the community.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your firm. How large is it? Well, what type of people do you hire? What do you look for when you're putting your teams together? And what are some of the challenges of owning a company and keeping it going and successful?
Well, first of all, I'm very excited that this is the 26th year we've been in business and we've made a profit every year. Very few investment Wall Street firms can say that they make money in the municipal sector every year. One of my partners recently passed, Muriel Siebert. And Muriel Siebert was the first lady of Wall Street. She was 82 when she just died. And she was on Wall Street for 11 years by herself. The only woman from 1967 to 1978.
Really?
So you can imagine the trials and tribulations that she went through. And there's a great book that she wrote called The Adventures of a Wall Street Maverick. Try to get your hands on it. And she's quite interesting. And then my other partner is Suzanne Shank. She's an African-American female. And she was an engineer from Georgia Tech, an MBA from Wharton.
An interesting combination.
Interesting combination. And then, of course, me with my background. And so the people that I look to hire people who had experience in the public sector. And I try to hire people from that particular region. And so if you look at my Dallas office, it was the first assistant city manager in the history of Dallas. In Houston, it was the former city deputy controller. Los Angeles, the former CFO for the Department of Water and Power, the largest municipally owned water district in the country. In Seattle, the former administrator of UMTA, which is now the FTA. Look in Chicago, she's the former finance director for Chicago Transit Authority. Detroit, the former medical director and finance director in Detroit. New York, former deputy controller of the city of New York, and the former city controller of New York, who just lost in this crazy race for mayor Bill Thompson, who's the African-American who ran for mayor. And so I look for people like that to spearhead the effort on the ground because they understand the local politics and administration, how to get things through the bureaucracy.
Right.
And most of these guys who are MBAs, they're clueless how to deal with government. They have absolutely no idea. Because in the public sector, title doesn't mean anything.
Power can be held by the most interesting assortment of people.
You got it. And usually the gatekeepers. You got to get past the gatekeeper before you can even talk to anyone. And see the relationship with that person, you'll find out an awful lot. And so there are a lot of people, and that's why I think that master's in public administration is very helpful. Because you understand how to deal with this bureaucracy. You're not caught up on name, title, or anything like that. You're trying to talk to the mayor, he's clueless in most situations.
How about your partners? How did you choose your partners, or how did the three of you come together?
We hired Suzanne early because one of our clients wanted someone, he was in St. Louis, and he wanted a banker to cover him. And I said, why complicate the situation? Who do you want to cover you? He told me Suzanne Shank, and so I went out and hired her. And then Vicki called me up one day, and she said, Napoleon, we should start this firm. And I was very proud of this because I'm the only partner she ever asked to be in partnership with her in her entire life. Nor the female, nor the male, nor the person with me. And she said, we have this opportunity to create the only minority and woman-owned firm on Wall Street. We have retail distribution, we have capital, and one day, this is a direct quote, we can compete with the big boys. And so in 2010, we were number 8 in the country. And that was a grand day for all of us. And also, I think that was the year after she rang the bell for a 40th year on Wall Street.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think that's a nice segue to another topic I mentioned I wanted to highlight and talk about.
This month marks Black History Month. Our country this year is recognizing the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. NSU, our university, is actually celebrating our 50th anniversary as well. We have 2 magnificent photo exhibits in our art museum and in the library to commemorate the civil rights movement. So I think for me and for many of us, it's top of mind. Tell me your thoughts on this time in our country and some lessons that you've learned, some experiences that you've had, and some things you want to see us working towards in the future too, some things that aren't done that our young people really need to make sure they address.
Well, I think the most important thing for the young people is to understand the history of the civil rights struggle. Up until really 1964, America was apartheid. It's like South Africa. I mean, we all just recently celebrated Mandela, but that's what we experienced here in the United States. And I was very blessed that one of the guys I hired in Dallas, retired Major General Hugh Robinson, he was a military attaché to LBJ. And he traveled the world with LBJ back in the mid-60s, and he's one of the individuals who was at the signing of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. And so I had a real good experience from him. We made a lot of progress. He used to say, because we have President Obama in the country, but there's still a long way to go. I think the things that Dr. King talked about, which is judging people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin, the more we can do that, I think the better society will be. And we make a lot of progress. We're still way better than any other country in the world, even though we have our own problems. But I think we're making progress in that effort. And I think you're seeing it by the inclusion of women in various positions, and also the same in the gay population. And so the society is way more open than it used to be. And I think the future of America is bright.
Thank you. Let's see, I have so many great questions. What advice would you give to our students in order for them to be well prepared for opportunities in your area of expertise? And what kind of things also can they do to create their own opportunities?
I think the first thing
You said work hard, I got that one.
Yeah, definitely work hard. I think also an internship. Internships are very helpful if you can find the right person to work for. I mean, that made all the difference for me. My internship rotated me through 5 departments. I worked in Office of Management and Budget, County Manager, Public Works Department, which is Streets and Roads, Human Resources, and then I chose Finance. I'm the only person in the history program that chose Finance, and I chose it at a time when we were trying to implement Financial Accounting and Management Information System, which was going from handwritten ledgers, mark notes, to technology, and making everything on a computer. And so people viewed it in a very negative way. But because I had been in this internship program, I was an ambassador to all these other departments. And so I think an internship is very crucial. I would suggest one book you ought to read. It's called Power Broker. It was written by I think Robert Carroll. It's about Robert Moses. And Robert Moses is became the most powerful man in America who was never elected. And he financed basically the infrastructure in New York. In today's dollars, it would be like $29 billion, all without being elected. And he used the law. He used the Tribal Bridge Authority. He used bonds and everything to make this happen. And so I wanted to become an investment banker. That was the first thing he told me. You need to, it was required reading at Solomon Brothers and Goldman Sachs. You had to read that before you started work. Because what it does, it teaches you to read between, like reading a newspaper, you read it differently than you read if you hadn't read this book. Because you'll find the story behind the story. Mm-hmm. And so everything you look at now, and then even back then I was reading like 20 newspapers a day around the world. I read like 47 a day just to keep up with what's going on. I don't read them all the way through, but I look for things that affect our industry or politics. And so I think the more you can integrate yourself into what's going on in the world, because we are a global society now, things affect everything everywhere. I think that would be helpful if you're trying to do that. And also, living within your means. Mm-hmm. When I started this company, my wife and I, we sacrificed, and I made sure I didn't go out and buy a big car and didn't get a big mortgage. That would come later. And so you keep your overhead low, then that will allow you to be able to experience, if you experience a difficult time, it won't break over you and it won't cause you to go out of business. And just one more thing too.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's one other thing you ought to watch too. There's one movie that's very, very helpful. It's called We Bought a Zoo.
Oh, I watched that.
Don't look at it for about the zoo, but look what it takes to be successful. And what you have to do, what you have to commit. You have to be all the way in if you're going to be successful. You can't go in this thing halfway. You got to be all the way in. And I try to encourage people, if you want to watch a good entrepreneurial movie, is that We Bought a Zoo. Believe it or not.
I watched that recently. My husband thought I was crazy, but he watched it. Okay, talk a little bit about Washington, D.C. The sequester. There was a lot of political brinksmanship in Congress over the federal debt ceiling, that the downgrading of the U.S. bond rating. Talk a little bit about what happened behind the scenes, what happened between the lines, and how did that downgrading affect maybe our local economies or affect your business and your industry?
Okay, let me start with the sequester. Sequester money is a good thing. There's a lot of no government. So we can afford to, it's not a cut in the budget, it's just a decrease in the growth of government. So once you've been working in government, you understand that. I think the president boxed himself in when he first got elected. And a lot of elected officials do this. We come in wanting to change things without knowing really how to change things. Mm-hmm. And what you really want to do is you want to change the players and you want to change the priorities. But the system that is set up, believe it or not, actually works pretty well. And so the president got himself in trouble, I think, by two things. One, the war is being financed off balance sheet. They just stay there. Don't bring it into the budget and try to correct all this, and then you're going to be labeled with that big deficit when it wasn't yours in the beginning. And the big thing is giving up what's it called? It's pork barrel, but it's a real term for it. It's
Oh,
don't tip my tongue.
yeah.
But it'll come back to me.
Not earmarks.
Earmarks.
Oh.
You know earmarks.
2 points for me.
You're going to let, your adversaries convince you to give up earmarks because it's supposed to be this bad thing. But you're in politics, and so if you want to get a project, that's why you have such a divide in Congress now, because you can't buy a vote because there's no earmarks anymore. They're starting to come back because I think it's either the debt limit or the budget where McConnell solved the problem. He got $2 billion for Kentucky for a water drainage project. That's how Washington works. And one of the things that hurt, and so Washington is sort of built by earmarks, and then you got K Street. All the retired congressmen and staff people go become lobbyists. They lobby the people they help get elected. And so if you don't understand how to maneuver through that process, then you got a real problem. Now at the local government, the downgrade has not affected us that much because people view the federal government as one thing, and not a lot of money's been flowing from the federal government to local government anyway. You're probably getting more from Tallahassee than you are from Washington, D.C. back to South Florida. Right. And so that's not much of an impact. And rates are at 1% basically anyway at the federal level, so it's not affected bond rating at all. This is actually an opportunity where I think a lot of governments missed the opportunity to borrow money because you can borrow at so low. When I worked in Dade County, I was glad to go before the county commission in 1981 and say, we got a bond issue today at $13.95,
Which was low.
under 14%, tax exempt. Now you can borrow for like 4%. And when I borrow, and the borrowing is used for infrastructure, and that's, if you travel around the world, America's a third world country when it comes to infrastructure. Our infrastructure is crumbling. You go to Europe, anyway, you go to China, it's the high-speed rail. You have no kind of high-speed rail. We're still out on automobile. Our roads aren't that good. They got all of these highways that are toll roads that are mechanized in terms of collection, in terms of giving out tickets, and we're just so far behind. And we need to invest more into that. And that's one way we keep jobs in America and create jobs in America, is by investing way more money in infrastructure. You get a return back on capital.
But don't you think that happens primarily at the local level, not at the federal level?
Federal level can encourage it by getting matching grants.
Oh, true. Like the high-speed rail in
Like
Florida.
high-speed rail in Florida. And so it's really matching grants that would help if we could do that. And Florida's done very well in terms of its, we're way ahead of California in terms of Department of Transportation. The highways, in terms of high-accuracy vehicles, tolls, toll taking and all that. But we still, 6 months ago, we just stopped collecting tolls at the Big Bridge.
Really?
In fact, we still have some toll takers.
So how about in South Florida, we sold 595 to a private company, and then they're expanding it. Is that becoming more common?
Yeah, that's going to be that will be the future of infrastructure in America. It's called public-private partnerships, in which we will be engaging the private sector more and with the public sector. But the challenge is a lot of this money is coming from sovereign wealth funds. Singapore, Dubai, Spain, and places like that. And our elected officials are not going to allow Ford Everglades to be sold to a company in Dubai. That's not going to work. But they can form joint ventures with American companies. And these American companies, and I'm trying to encourage them to set up entities that will have labor involved and environmental organizations involved in part of these joint ventures. Therefore, you protect the workers, you protect the environment, and you still get the public, but you still get the infrastructure investment from foreign entities and create this partnership. But we have to have control and ownership of it. They have to be an investor in it, and their return is getting capital. Getting return on the capital, then they can control the country's infrastructure.
Interesting. At the Port of Miami, they're doing a tunnel, and that's going to be such an interesting project. It took a while to get going, but it's just, I think it's close to being completed now.
Yeah, it is actually George Burgess, who was.
George Burgess, yeah.
He was in the intern program that I was going to be county manager, and he was 2 years behind me. George is spearheading an effort by Governor Scott. He's working for a law firm. He's putting together the.
Becker Polyakoff, I think. Becker Polyakoff, I think, is the law firm.
His law firm.
Yeah.
He's putting together the request for information on how to move this forward. But again, as you can see, it takes somebody with a degree in public administration to make this happen. It's not an MBA doing that because they don't understand how government really operates.
Talk about, so you've worked with MBAs and MPAs. What are some of the areas you feel as though the two cross over well?
In the end.
MPA and MBA?
I said in the end, in the master's.
Oh, in the master's. So you need both. You need both. All right.
I'm biased, of course. But I deal with a lot of MBAs, and again, they're very good from a quantitative standpoint. And you need quantitative analysis. But that's secondary to understanding the policy and the implementation. Anybody can, from my perspective, can do the quant work. But very few people can figure out how to do this and make it work and get it through the bureaucracy for it to become effective.
Well, I think that's similar when you look at engineering programs. It's always a good thing to have computer science or engineering have a strong partnership with the business school so that those two groups of students, as they're doing their classwork and they're working on projects, they're learning to work together, because in business, once they leave their academic program, they aren't going to be able to just write code in a cubicle. The code has to be for a purpose. So I think probably an important lesson is the team approach. How do you work together with a common purpose and realizing everybody brings a specific expertise and that no one expertise gets it done. Just writing code doesn't make Google successful. Let's see, it's about 11:20:25, so I want to make sure there's not a question I missed that was important. Oh, I know, there is one. So talk about your basketball career and some of your lessons from basketball.
I grew up in Indiana, and it was very challenging in the sense that I went to a football school. We only had two schools in Indiana, in East Chicago. One that I went to, you only play, in theory, you only play football and track. The other school, we played baseball and basketball. Well, I didn't want to play football, I wanted to play basketball. And so guys in my same class, we decided we're going to revolt. And so we're going to play basketball. And so we didn't play football. So needless to say, that created a lot of angst among the coaches and among the administrators. And so in my senior year, we were going to be highly ranked. And I think we're working on the movie, trying to get the story down, but a lot of things are hidden that the older folk don't necessarily share with you. But magically, we were going to our senior year, and we were going to have no games at our home gym. All our games were going to be at a cross-town library. Now, we in the gym that held 3,500 students. Both schools only had 1,000 students in it, from 7th to 12th grade. But the Crosstown Rogers Gym held 7,000. So in one sense, you can understand making the money. But the other team was going to be ranked like number 3 in the state. We were going to rank number 1. But since they were designated to be the basketball team, I think they were trying to say, okay, you guys going to play them twice. You'll be home team, but you're playing them in their gym, and you can't practice in their gym. But anyway, let me go long story short, we wound up going 28-0, won 20, we had one home game, won 27 games on the road, which is unheard of. And Indiana is very unusual in basketball. There's no class. Like in Florida, you got 3A, 4A, 5A. When I played, there was no class. And to win a championship, and this is where the hard work came in. There was a game at 11 o'clock, a game at 1 o'clock, and a championship game at 7:30.
Oh my gosh.
4 weeks in a row. So it was a gauntlet. And so for us to win that, we always had to be the best team for that region. And we had some incredible games, but we came back and won the championship. And so from there, I went to scholarship at the University of Nevada. I was a freshman All-American. I still hold school records, and I got hurt my sophomore year. And that's why I decided. I was fortunate because my whole focus was basketball, nothing else. And I met a coach who had just got drafted by the Chicago Bulls. And the Bulls only had one spot open. They gave that to Howard Porter, who was Player of the Year. And he didn't make it. He said, man, chance of playing professional basketball is minimal. You better try to figure out how to get an education. And so, to get where I'm at, it's actually a good segue into why I'm an investment banker. So what did I really want out of basketball? I wanted competitiveness. There's nothing more competitive than fighting Goldman Sachs for a deal, believe me. 2, you travel a lot. As you can see, I travel an awful lot. And then 3, you can create some financial success. And so that's really what I wanted out of professional basketball. And so investment banking has given me that, and it all started right here in public administration.
Interesting.
All right, do we have some folks who'd like to ask a question? Thanks, Marie.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for coming down to South Florida with us.
All
My name
right.
is Jeremy Mathis. I'm an alumni of the school. And you touched on the joint ventures between public and private.
Yes.
Do you think in the next 20, 50 years that a lot of these sovereign wealth funds will come over and take over a lot of the American companies and own America, basically?
No, I think they'll be in a joint venture relationships. I don't think the politics of this state or any state or any city will allow foreign entities to come in and take over a substantial portion. Now, there may be a project that's totally unfinanceable, that they would come in and they may offer them an opportunity, but I guarantee you they're not going to give up like $3.95 or I-95 or something like that, or whatever relates to anyone. They're not going to allow that.
But it's going to become more common, much more common.
It's more common, absolutely. But yes, the question would be take over.
Oh, yeah. There's one here.
What advice would you give to young people about saving and investing their money?
When I was growing up, you had to take at least 10% of everything you made and put it in the bank immediately. And that's a savings account. That's not investing in a high-tech fund that may not be around. It's actually putting cash in the bank. And because I talked to a lot of young people just traveling around, and they thought their mutual fund was a savings, a mutual fund that was invested in technology was a savings account, and that's not a savings account. So I would encourage you to do that as a basis as you're getting started. Because you need cash. Cash is king. When everything goes wrong, those who have cash, those who have gold, will be the ones who will be able to survive the very difficult times that we experience. interesting too, because the older guys have been on Wall Street, and you look back and see every 5 to 7 years, we have an economic crisis. And if you go back to 08, to 01, 93, 87, 80, 74, on the same time period. So you look at the next couple of years, and there's some kind of potential, from a historical standpoint, some kind of financial crisis. So you need to start saving your money, and making sure you got some investments that you get your principal back. I'm very big on getting my principal back. I may not make as much interest as the next guy, but whatever I give you, get that back.
Thanks. Oh, right behind you.
Hi, thank you for coming and sharing your wealth of knowledge and experience. Carl Bay, local real estate development. What criteria would you, as a private sector developer, create when approaching an investment house money management firm to do larger international developments? Case in point, Bahamas, we're looking at a hotel, casino, land development, and I'm trying to find out who I should be approaching and what questions I should ask to interview them. So I'd like to hear from you what laundry list you might have, what questions you might ask for the investment houses, money managers, when looking for an investment and counsel to bring you through a development project.
Well, it's different because you're dealing in an international environment. And so the first thing people want to know, what is the stability of that government? Mm. And that's the problem, a lot of the problems with the third world. And so you tend to find people who are operating in the third world, they are the ones who are more experienced in dealing with that. It would be very difficult probably to get an American company, unless they do a lot of business in the Bahamas, pretty much interested in that. You'd probably be better at getting someone from, a Dubai or Singapore or someone like that are used to dealing around the world, used to dealing in China, places like that, where in a moment's notice, the project could be gone. And that was one of the challenges that Africa's had, especially back when they first got independence. A lot of the black companies like Johnson Products and people like that wanted to go to Africa, but they were concerned that they would lose their investment because you could be nationalized like that, and it's gone. If you got it, it's gone. And so that's the challenge we're dealing with the third world.
Mm-hmm. Question. Somebody? Oh yeah, right there. Sorry.
What's your vision for your firm for 2014?
Vision for the firm in 2014? Well, we're off to a good start. And so I think it's going to be a very, very good year. The challenge that we have, we've been working in a contracting fee environment. Mm-hmm. And so everything is called, it's the Walmartization of everything. Mm-hmm. Everybody is having to cut back on their fees except the rating agencies. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how they keep going up. Nobody relies upon them, but everybody is getting more competitive. But we think 2014 is going to be a good year. Like I said, we're doing a big $300 million deal for San Diego Airport today.
For which? For
San Diego Airport.
Oh.
We're doing a consolidated rental car facility. Oh. And then we're doing, in a month, we're doing a $700 million transaction for the city of Houston for a water project and multiple other projects around the country. So we think 2014 is going to be good for us. But we always stay within our means, so it'll be good. The challenge for us, though, is going to be in the top 10. There's been a lot of consolidation in the last 2 years. And so firms that we were ahead of, 3 or 4 of them have merged together. And so we won't be in the top 10, but we could be like 11 to 12, but we'll still be very profitable. And that's the challenge that most of these Wall Street firms make a mistake. Everybody wants to be number one, and so do everything they can to get to number one. And as soon as they get to number one, they go out of business.
With the loss of a partner, what kind of succession planning are you doing?
I wrote that down. That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing we're going through right now. Suzanne Shank has sort of taken over Neil Siebert's role, and so we're looking for other employees to become owners of the firm. And I am now like the senior person in the firm. And so I've been trying to bring young people. Most of the people in the firm are between like 40 and 53. And so we're trying to get that generation to take over. I had two goals in starting my firm. One was to be in the top 10, and two, to make a successful transition to the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
Very few African American firms in the history of America, small firms, have done that, whether it's Ebony or Thacker Construction Company or any of these other second generation kids don't want to do what their parents did. And so what I wanted to do is to be a second generation Goldman Sachs. And so I've identified a couple of people. We just hired this great young kid. He's not that young, but very interesting background. He grew up with Caribbean Grain, which is the worst project in the country.
Chicago.
Went to Howard and graduated, and then he became the first African American to make law review at Notre Dame. And he went to work directly for Jimmy Dimon at J.P. Morgan. And worked in mergers and acquisitions, and he joined us in June of last year. And so his name is Gary Hall Jr. He'll become a partner sometime in a very short distance. And then hopefully, eventually he'll become chairman, and I can become chairman emeritus. Just hang out with Jack.
Any other questions? Oh, another one.
Two-part question. What were some of the challenges when you started your firm, and how did you go about getting customers?
Well, see, I thought about this a long time before I started my firm.
That's what it sounded like.
And so what I did with my first partner, what I did was, I said, you go out and raise $1 million in capital. I'm going to take this American Express card and develop a list of clients that would be loyal to me. And at whatever point in time I thought they were going to be loyal to me, then I would jump and we would start this firm. So it wasn't like I just said, when I'm going to start a firm. I had a pretty good idea how I would do that. And then with customers, and that came from working in the public sector. I had all these Wall Street firms come down and pitch me every day about how to, why don't you hire me? And these are our qualifications. And so I took the best approach from all of them and developed my own strategy of how to convince people to hire you. And it's very unique in how you do that, because why should I hire you when I can hire Goldman Sachs or Merrill Lynch, or J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley? And that's what we face every day. But because we can convince them that we have a better understanding of your needs as this city or this county, and we can actually do a better job because 100% of our focus is on the municipal bond world.
Mm-hmm.
We're not focused on commodities or oil or gold or any of that. We're focused strictly on you. And the big firms, they don't look at it like that. They look at who pays them the most amount of money. And so local government is really not that important to them. When they can do a big deal for Exxon, like this pipeline they're about to build in Alaska, they don't care about our county in reality, because the amount of money they can make is probably 2,000 times more. And so which one would you go for?
So it was really developing a niche in your area of expertise and really taking advantage of that.
That's it.
Thank you.
Did you have a second question, or you got both of them? Another question? Oh, over here.
Professor?
We're going to make you go. Oh, Professor, yeah, we'll do that there.
What strategies do you think municipal finance departments are going to have to employ to overcome the huge pension liabilities they've been building up the last decade?
Now that's the $99,000 question.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with retirement systems, well, twofold. 80% of the municipal budget is police and fire.
Mhm.
Retirement systems are police and fire. It's not the average worker who's a secretary or a sanitary worker, and they're not getting paid the big bucks. It's police and fire, and more so firemen working all this overtime and being able to retire at 50 and all of this. And so, and then it's compounded by they're very active politically. And so they give money to elected officials who, because of term limits, are not going to be there that long. So they agree to continue this whole process. And so what you're seeing is, you're seeing people file bankruptcy to get out of it. But they're filing bankruptcy not to default on debt, it's strictly to force restructuring of these retirement systems. And there will become a time, San Jose is an interesting case study. The mayor has put on a ballot a referendum, I think it passed, to restructure the retirement system for the city of San Jose. And so you're going to find more fiscally prudent people who are going to force those two particular unions to change the way they operate. Now, there's a little abuse in the administrative side, like county managers, and, you know, one or two people who can manipulate for a higher amount, but that's minuscule versus the police and fire. And somewhere along the line, they're going to deal with it. But that's the biggest questions, and that's why the rating agencies don't have the impact on the bond world, because all of the investment firms like Franklin Fund and Schroeder, people like that, they're focused 100% on that. That's where they see the biggest potential liability. But when it comes to the security of municipal bonds, the first call on revenue is usually to pay debt service on bonds. That's why bonds are still very secure, as long as you stay away from peripheral debt, which is like housing, dirt bonds, and things like that. But if the government has to, by charter, and that's one of the reasons I actually question about our success. When I started this firm, I worked in government. I knew by charter we had to provide streets, sanitation, transportation, security at the airport, water, wastewater treatment. And so I focus all of our emphasis on that particular field rather than on some of this peripheral stuff. Because by charter you have to do this. So you have to do this by charter. And so that was a way to ensure or increase the likelihood of being successful by doing that. But that is the number one issue in the market right now is police and fire retirement systems.
Kathy.
Hello, thank you again for coming and speaking with us. I'm Kathy Eggleston, and I run a scholarship and leadership development program for undergraduate students here in the Huizenga School. And I wanted to ask you, what is the biggest professional risk that you've taken in your career that didn't pay off, and what you learned from it, how you used it going forward?
That's a good question.
Wow. I can't think of one. Yeah, I can't think of one that did not work out.
How about maybe didn't work out the way you thought it would?
That's every day. There is no the best laid plans of mice and men. You have to be very flexible and you have to improvise. But professionally, the only thing that didn't work out was, again, playing professional basketball. And that's when I decided to make that switch to find out what it was that I wanted out of it. But from a professional standpoint, I can't think of anything.
Hi, my name is Anitra Lansing. I'm an attorney here in Fort Lauderdale, and I spent most of my career in public finance. I'm a member of the National Association of Bond Lawyers.
Oh, wow.
So I was curious to ask you, the municipal advisor regulations, the municipal advisor role that was created as part of the Dodd-Frank Act, does Secret Brandford see an opportunity there to grow a new line of business in the municipal advisor area? Do you think that's going to end up getting driven to smaller operators? How do you see that developing?
We are actually trying to figure that rule out. it was this force from us, as you know, at the end. Thank God we got a July 1 deadline. We are really trying to figure out how we're going to operate. And a lot is going to depend if we can get these issuers. And Chicago is taking this step. They said that this is our financial advisor, and put it on the website. So that sort of, from that perspective, complies with that rule. But whether people will be willing to do that, willing to pay more for that, we're really working through that. That's what I was saying earlier about this whole public administration. If you don't understand how to work through this bureaucracy, it's a real challenge. And that is the biggest nightmare that caught everybody off guard. And maybe you have a solution. but it's a real challenge, and we're really working through it. And hopefully we'll be able to figure something out. Because it will change the way, because in theory, you can't call them clients anymore. You can't. What the rules basically says is that you can't act as a municipal advisor without certain guarantees to the client. And so you can't make presentations anymore and talk about how we can help you. You can only say what we've done for you in the past. That's a very tough way to market. And so we're working through that whole process. It's a nightmare. I know a lot of firms like, I won't mention the firm name, but it's Napoleon. We're about to lay off all our analysts, or most of our analysts. We don't need them anymore. If we can't give people ideas, we can only market to them based upon our relationships. Might be, but it's one of the top 3 firms on Wall Street in the financial advisory category. Not all of them, but 50, 60%. It's a lot.
Yeah, behind.
Right. You said that you can't think of anything.
What's that?
You said that you can't think of anything that really went wrong. What is it you think that made you so successful all the time?
I said things that go wrong, but nothing that had a major effect. But I think everything I've done, pretty much, I view it as a mission. And a mission means more than, from my perspective, than anything. It's a spiritual undertaking. And so I've always viewed it I was never in the military, but it's like taking the hill. Whatever you have to do to be successful, it's legal. I should say that. That you will do. And that means the level of effort you have to do. And so all the resources that you learn in your whole life, all the experience you experienced as a kid growing up, whether you were bullied or this or that, and you have to figure out how to use that as a positive effort. And faith is very, very important. And you just can never give up on any circumstances. You're not going to let this defeat you.
Perfect segue. Oh, one more? All right. Final question.
Can you share a little bit about your feelings on the importance of giving back?
Yeah, giving back is extremely important. That's one of the things that we do personally. We have a couple of foundations we've set up to help kids. As a firm, we don't say this publicly, but basically we tithe. We take a certain percentage of our money, and we set aside, and that we give it to what we call targeted groups. And so they tend to be poor nonprofits. One of the things I'm proud of is the Barker Street Project, which is runaway kids who come to San Francisco. We support that big time because those are the kids that are at the bottom. And so the big firms like Goldman and B of A, they give to the opera and the symphony and things like that. We target most of ours to groups like that, like the Johnny Holmes eight group in South Dallas, which is all over the country. We try to target ours and that, so we really give back financially, and also we give back with our time. And always have internship for kids all over the country, starting in high school, and even college kids who just want to get exposure. Because I didn't realize until a few years ago, one of the reasons why I was very successful at getting jobs. My first job was working as a stock boy at the A&P store, which is like Publix in high school. And then, so I worked as a stock boy and went to school. And so for a kid at 16, by the time, and then wear a shirt and tie, be on time and all that, and play basketball, and went to school, I didn't realize that people view that as, wow, this kid is pretty ambitious, but he's also
And disciplined.
disciplined.
Yeah.
You know, and that really helped me. So then I left them to work for Standard Oil in the summertime on Union Carbide. Got a dirty job shoving asphalt, but they saw Union Carbide on their resume and they saw Standard Oil. It was like, wow, this young kid come from out of here. He's an athlete. He's like disciplined and all this, and so that was very helpful. And so I would really encourage young people to get jobs early on, especially if you get a job in a retail organization, because you know how to deal with people. Maybe not as much as you used to, but you still get a chance to deal with people. And interaction with people is everything. I'm virtually off the grid. I don't text. I have no email. Well, I tell you, email goes to my secretary. I don't need email because you have to have it for documents. You know, lawyers, the documents are on email. And people say, why don't you have technology? I say very simply, there are no deals on the internet. If I can get hired, get somebody to pay me, just like I've been on the internet, I would be on the internet. But it takes interaction, going out visiting with clients one-on-one, and sharing my knowledge and taking them to lunch, and et cetera, cultivating a relationship. And that's what's missing today. And so if a young person can actually do that, plus have technology, you'd be way ahead of the curve in terms of your competitors.
A final question from me. Okay, so you've obviously maintained a wonderful marriage for a long time. So how do you keep a time for personal life and, having a family and time with Sharon?
Well, fortunately, we've both been very active, and so virtually from the time we got married in college. And so she was going to school full-time and working, and so was I. And so it's always been this partnership of working. And we'll be celebrating our 38th anniversary in May 21st of this year. And so it's been a wonderful ride, and without the support of a loving wife, a lot of this I couldn't have done, because somebody has to have your back. And if you have that, then it makes all the difference in the world. But as I said, I was very fortunate to be selected in this book called Men of Courage. It's 24 young men who come from very humble beginnings, like Ron Brown, the actor Avery Brooks, and people like that. I was fortunately chosen one of those people. They actually threw me a quote. What is the one thing you would say? And my quote was, you can't let anything or anybody deter you from your dream. Period.
Perfect ending. If you'll join me in thanking Napoleon Brandford for being here. We'll do it together. Okay, so a small token of our appreciation. We have a certificate for you for serving as part of our Distinguished Lecture Series. And I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did. I found a lot of inspiration, a lot of good knowledge I'll be able to show off in some conversations, and made a new friend for NSU. So thank you very much.
Thank you.